You know that moment when you open your banking app and the number looks unfamiliar? Not shocking. Not movie scene dramatic. Just unfamiliar enough that your brain pauses for half a second longer than usual. You scroll away, then scroll back. Maybe you refresh once just to be sure. And then you do this quiet thing where you don't screenshot it, you don't tell anyone, you don't celebrate. You just stare and think, okay, that's new. For a lot of people, that moment happens around $10,000. Not because 10,000 is rich, not because it changes your life overnight, but because it's the first time money stops feeling like something you're chasing and starts feeling like something you're holding. I remember the first time I hit it. I genuinely thought I'd feel accomplished, like something would click, like I'd finally exhale and think, all right, I'm good now. Instead, I felt proud for maybe 10 minutes. Then I felt nervous. Then I felt this weird pressure, like I was now responsible for not messing it up, like the money came with expectations I hadn't agreed to. And nobody warned me about that part. I'm Donki, by the way. Not in a formal intro kind of way, just in a we're already mid-conversation kind of way. I've been on both sides of that number. I've hit it, lost it, rebuilt it, protected it too tightly, spent it too loosely, and misunderstood it more times than I'd like to admit. And what surprised me most wasn't what $10,000 could do. It was what it did to my head. Because once you cross that number, something shifts. Not your lifestyle, not your personality, but your relationship with money itself. Before 10,000, money feels urgent. Every dollar has a job before it even lands. Rent, food, bills, survival. There's no room to wonder what money means because you're too busy needing it. After 10,000, urgency fades just enough to be replaced by something trickier. Choice. And choice is heavier than necessity. I remember standing in a store looking at something that cost a few $100s. Pre-10,000 me wouldn't have hesitated. The answer would have been no. Not because it wasn't useful, but because it wasn't possible. The decision made itself. Post-10,000 me stood there doing mental gymnastics. Well, technically I could afford this. That word, technically, is dangerous, because technically true doesn't mean emotionally safe. Now every purchase feels like a negotiation with your future self. You're not just buying a thing anymore. You're choosing between who you are now and who you might need to be later. And that creates friction. This is where a lot of people quietly sabotage themselves, not by blowing their savings, but by freezing. They stop enjoying their money because they're afraid of going backward. Every dollar spent feels like it's subtracting from some invisible version of security that hasn't fully formed yet. You don't feel broke anymore, but you don't feel rich. You're in this awkward in-between where guilt and caution hover over every decision. Here's the part nobody likes to admit. $10,000 doesn't actually protect you from much. It's not enough to quit your job. It's not enough to absorb a serious medical emergency. It's not enough to make reckless decisions painless. But it feels big because it's the first time loss becomes visible. Before that, money leaks out in small, constant ways. Bills, fees, random expenses. You don't overthink it because you're used to recovering. At 10,000, loss becomes hypothetical. You imagine it before it happens. And imagining loss can be more stressful than experiencing it. That's when the questions start. Should I invest this? Should I keep it in cash? What if the market crashes? What if I need it? Those aren't bad questions, but they're often asked with way too much emotional weight. I remember thinking, if I mess this up, it means I'm bad with money, which is a ridiculous belief, but it felt very real. That number started to feel like a scoreboard for my competence as an adult. That's a lot of pressure to put on $10,000. Another thing nobody warns you about is how lonely that milestone can feel. Not because you're isolated financially, but because you don't know who to talk to about it. If your friends are still struggling, bringing it up feels awkward. If your family stresses about money, you don't want to create tension. And if you go online, everyone either has way more than you or is pretending they do. So you navigate this new mental space alone. You scroll, you watch videos, you read posts, and suddenly 10,000 doesn't feel impressive anymore. It feels small, late, insufficient. Comparison hits hard at this stage. You see someone saying they hit 6 figures at 25 and feel like you missed a memo. You see someone turn 10,000 into a business and wonder why you're just sitting on it. That's when people start forcing moves. They rush into investments they don't understand. They over-optimize. They feel like their money needs to be doing something at all times, or else they're failing. I did that. I shuffled money around just to feel productive. Not because it was the right move, but because standing still felt irresponsible. Nothing catastrophic happened, but nothing meaningful happened either. And what stuck with me wasn't the outcome. It was the stress. Every dip felt personal. Every headline felt loud. I checked numbers more than I checked messages. That's when I learned something important. Money doesn't stress you out because it's complicated. It stresses you out because it amplifies who you already are. If you're anxious, it feeds anxiety. If you're impatient, it punishes impatience. If you're comparison-driven, it gives that voice a megaphone. $10,000 doesn't calm those traits. It hands them responsibility. Another subtle shift happens around this point. You start creating mental buckets for money that don't actually exist yet. This is future money. Not emergency savings, not invested, not spent, just waiting. Because it doesn't have a job, it feels unstable. You tell yourself, I'll use this for something important, but you don't know what yet. So every decision feels temporary. Every plan feels flexible. Flexibility sounds nice until you realize it also means indecision. I used to mentally divide my balance into imaginary categories. This part is untouchable. This part is for investing. This part is for life, I guess. But because those buckets weren't real, I kept redefining them. One day, something felt affordable. The next day, it didn't. My rules changed with my mood. That inconsistency is exhausting. What usually works better at this stage isn't optimization, it's clarity. Not fancy systems, not perfect strategies, just simple clarity. When I finally decided what my money was for, everything got quieter. Not because I had more money, but because it stopped bouncing around in my head all day. For me, that meant saying, very plainly, this portion exists to make me feel safe. This portion exists to learn with. This portion exists to be spent eventually without guilt. No spreadsheets that impress anyone, just boundaries I could remember. And here's the important part. I didn't try to maximize every dollar. The urge to maximize is strong at 10,000. Every decision feels high stakes. But over-optimizing early keeps you tense. It turns money into a constant test instead of a support system. Another thing nobody talks about is how 10,000 changes your relationship with boredom. Before, boredom meant wanting money, wanting progress, wanting relief. After, boredom starts whispering different ideas. What if I start something? What if I invest in that? What if I buy that thing I've been eyeing? Boredom becomes a spending trigger, not because you need anything, but because you want movement. You want your money to do something, so you feel like you're doing something too. I bought things that made sense logically, but not emotionally. Subscriptions I barely used. Tools I thought would transform my workflow. Small upgrades that promised efficiency and delivered clutter. None of them ruined me. But collectively, they taught me something important. Money doesn't like being bored, but that doesn't mean you need to entertain it. Sometimes the best thing you can do at this stage is let money be boring. Boring money gives you breathing room. It gives your goals time to mature instead of forcing them too early. It lets you notice patterns instead of reacting to impulses. There's also an identity shift that happens around 10,000. You stop seeing yourself as someone who's trying to save and start seeing yourself as someone who has savings. That's subtle, but powerful. You might feel pressure to maintain that identity, to not slip backward, to prove to yourself that this wasn't a fluke, that pressure can motivate or paralyze. I avoided reasonable expenses not because I couldn't afford them, but because I didn't want to see the number go down. I didn't want to break the illusion of stability. That's when saving stops supporting your life and starts restricting it. Progress isn't the number only going up. That's unrealistic. Progress is the number behaving the way you expect based on intentional choices. Sometimes it goes down because you used it well. Sometimes it stays flat because stability was the goal. Sometimes it grows slowly because patience matters more than speed. $10,000 isn't meant to impress anyone. It's meant to give you room to practice. Practice making decisions without panic. Practice spending without guilt. Practice waiting without feeling behind. And practice implies mistakes. Small ones, recoverable ones. The kind that teach you more than advice ever could. At some point, You realize $10,000 isn't the milestone you thought it was. Not because it's insignificant, but because it doesn't answer the questions you hoped it would. It doesn't tell you what to do next. It doesn't guarantee confidence. It doesn't protect you from yourself. What it gives you is space. Space to pause. Space to absorb mistakes. Space to learn what actually makes you feel okay afterward. That's the part people miss. Financial milestones aren't trophies. They're environments. $10,000 is an environment where your habits finally get room to show themselves. That's why two people can hit the same number and feel completely different. One feels calm, the other feels restless. It's not the money, it's the relationship. Looking back, the most valuable thing $10,000 gave me wasn't growth, it was feedback. It showed me where I was impulsive, where I was overly cautious, where I confused movement with progress, where I avoided decisions out of fear. And slowly, without drama, I adjusted. I stopped checking my balance just to reassure myself. I stopped moving money just to feel productive. I stopped assuming every decision needed to be optimal. I started asking simpler questions. Will this actually improve my life? Will I regret not doing this? Am I acting from fear or clarity? Those questions don't give perfect answers, but they give honest ones. And here's something grounding. $10,000 isn't the peak of your financial life. If you reached it once, you can reach it again. If you lost it, you didn't lose the skills that got you there. Money comes and goes. The way you respond to it is what compounds. If you're around this stage right now, feeling proud and anxious at the same time, that doesn't mean something's wrong. It means you're learning. You don't need to rush. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to squeeze every dollar until it performs. What you need is time to normalize having something to lose without letting that fear run your decisions. Progress here looks boring. It looks like restraint. It looks like clarity. It looks like patience. And that's okay, because the real upgrade after $10,000 isn't financial. It's emotional. It's being able to look at your money without flinching. It's being able to spend intentionally without guilt. It's being able to sit with uncertainty without immediately fixing it. That calm doesn't arrive all at once. It builds quietly, choice by choice. You'll still second-guess yourself. You'll still make decisions you'd redo. That doesn't mean you're bad with money. It means you're human. The goal was never perfection. It was progress you can live with. So if that number feels heavier than you expected, that's not a problem. It's a sign you've reached the point where money stops being theoretical and starts asking who you are. Answer slowly. You've got time.